call to order the EDC meeting for February the 7th, 2002. Jonah, can we have a roll call, please?
Daryl Anderson, Beverly Raymond, Christopher Smith, Rashad Harris, Harold Doucette, Jerry LeBeau, Rhonda Connor. You have a quorum.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My plate. There's somebody, Ms. Raymond, would you do the invocation, please? Please stand.
Father God, we come once again, thank you for your many blessings. We ask that you please bless this meeting in a mighty special way. We come to you today asking for your guidance, your wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Ask that we have meaningful discussions and allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of this community. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, before we jump into the meeting, I'd like to welcome Harold Doucette to the board. Harold, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support of the EDC and our initiatives. Would you like to say anything, Mr. Doucette?
Oh, nothing. Let's go.
Okay. But moving forward then, I don't know if each board member have had an opportunity to review the minutes from January the 11th, the regular board meeting, as well as the special board meeting, as well as January 20th special board meeting, and January 25th special joint meeting. I want to give you a few minutes to peruse the information, and then upon that, we'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
I second.
It has been moved and second that we accept the minutes of the regular board meetings and the special board meetings. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We will now move to presentations. That'll be Dr. Stafford.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, board members, for the time. It's always a pleasure to come before this board. The college and the city of Port Arthur have been partners for just over 100 years now. And it's always a pleasure to come and talk partnership with this board. So I appreciate your time. We do a lot of training together, and a lot of the training we do together is about commercial driving. Today, the 7th of February 2022, Federal Motor Safety Carrier regulations changed. Probably the most impactful change they've made in the last 2 decades. I'd like to give the board a brief update on those changes tonight, and then offer a training to the board for any board members who could attend. It would be about a 45-minute training, and I would take board members through the Federal Motor Safety Carrier information that was sent to third-party examiners by the Federal Motor Safety Carrier Administration. So with your indulgence, I'd like to walk you through these changes in a compacted form right now, and then for any who would like it, I'd like to take you through it in a more advanced form. The most critical change is what this film is showing here. From this day forward, there will in the United States be what is called an entry-level driver's training facility. As of today, no school that is not certified as an entry-level driver's training facility can teach commercial driving in Texas or in any of the United States. And it's going to have a significant change on the way people learn to drive and on some area local businesses. As a part of the new entry-level driver training rule, there will now be a specific theory curriculum developed by the Federal Motor Safety Carrier Administration, followed by a very specific behind-the-wheel curriculum, and the two will specifically be sequential. Historically, any person who wanted to train for their commercial driver's license could simply study the material, go to the local DPS, and take the test. Get your commercial license. This is a big deal in this area, especially with small businesses owning dump trucks. Local small business, a lot of people involved in it. Father teaches son, father teaches daughter. The kids learn to drive that truck before they ever drive a car. That can't happen any further. There will be no self-training for a commercial driver's license. And of course, the focus is to put a safer driver on the road. Let me walk you through some of the things contained in this rule. The new entry-level driver training regulations will cover anyone seeking the Class A or Class B commercial license, and they will also cover 3 very specific endorsements: the passenger endorsement for passenger buses, the hazmat endorsement for transporting poisonous and dangerous chemicals, and the school bus endorsement for school bus drivers. And of course, you can come back to their focus. The focus is on safety. So each of these endorsements either cover drivers who are transporting a large number of people, drivers who are transporting children, or drivers who are transporting hazardous chemicals that could affect a large number of people in case of a wreck. There will be some people who are not subject to these new rules. Anybody who currently holds the commercial driver's license and needs to add an endorsement does not come through the new training. Any person who holds a restricted license and needs to remove that restriction, say they trained in an automatic vehicle and they want to remove that automatic restriction, so they've trained in a standard, they can come and test and remove that restriction. So those people are not subject to these new rules. There are also a series of what's called exempt drivers, but these are largely military or government drivers like the Port Authority. You can drive a very large vehicle at the port, but as long as you don't come out on the public roads, you don't require a license. So those people will be exempt from these new rules, but that's not a lot of people. In addition, there will be some people right now who already hold their commercial learner's permit. A commercial learner's permit is good for 90 days and can be renewed once. So for the next 6 months, a student who already holds that learner's permit does not have to comply with the new rules. They could self-train in a truck, get themselves a driving test, and hold their commercial driver's license. But at the end of that 6 months, the window closes and everyone will be subject to these rules. In addition to creating the rules for the for the entry-level driver's training facility, the Federal Motor Safety Carrier Administration has created the Training Provider Registry. All entry-level training facilities must register with the Federal Motor Safety Carrier and must self-certify that we are now meeting the criteria of the new curriculums that they have published. Anyone who does not register can no longer teach commercial driving in the United States. Our college has registered. And effectively, what this means is all self-training stops, as I had said before. The new curricula that the Federal Motor Safety Carrier has published cover the Class A and B, cover someone upgrading from the B to A, and they've published specific curricula for these endorsements where these were self-trained in the past. If you look, this is the index for the new Class A theory portion, and you can see how detailed it is. This is the index for the entire Texas Commercial Driver's Manual. So if you compare the two, you see the amazing increase in level of detail. Now, if you actually were sitting and reading both of them, this Texas Driver's Manual contains the heart of what's in here, but not all of it, and not nearly in the level of detail. And there have been significant portions that have been added to the new federal curriculum which have never been in the state curriculum. Most of all, they have to do with safety and training about new electronic driver logs. A driver can only drive for so many hours. Historically, you kept a paper log, but now when you get in your vehicle, you sign in or card in, and that computer has the ability to override that truck and shut it down if you try to drive longer than the hours you can drive in a day, and will be required to train about that. This is the behind the wheel portion of the same curriculum, and again, you can see it's extremely detailed, and there are pieces in it that either did not exist historically or they've been significantly augmented. For example, this bit here, there's a lot been added to the test about alley docking and offset backing and 45 and 90 degree backing. Historically, we taught a driver to back well. They could back safely straight. And then when they went to the job, they learned to back to fit their terminal. Not every terminal needs you to do a 90 or a 40 degree backing. No longer. We have to teach all the different styles of backing, and we have to certify that the driver is competent to do them before they can graduate. What we intend to do to bring our class up to the scale that this intends to offer, we need to increase our theory class by 20 hours. We currently teach 40 hours of theory training, and we're going to move to 60. We plan to increase our behind the wheel class by 40 hours. We currently teach 260 behind the wheel hours, and we'll come up to about 300 behind the wheel hours. So it will make our program longer than it has been in the past. We will be offering separate classes for the new endorsement training. Now, historically, there was no specific curriculum to train for these endorsements. You simply took the driver's manual, you took it home with you in the evening and studied it, and you were able to go and sit for the test. Now, you must study according to the new curriculum, and an entry-level training provider must certify that you've passed this material. There are two parts to the training now. They call them theory and behind the wheel. According to the new regulations, a person can take their theory training from a different provider who teaches behind the wheel. They can separate. This is something Federal Motor Safety Carrier has wanted for a long time, because what this creates is a learner's permit that travels throughout the United States. You could be in New York and you're a citizen there, and you've taken your theory portion and earned your commercial learner's permit. But then your job transfers you to Texas, because Texas is where all the growth is. So all of a sudden you have a New York learner's permit. What are you going to do? What you can do is come to any Texas ELDT and finish your training on the behind the wheel portion. There will be two portions in behind the wheel training: the range and open road portions. In the range, you learn to check your vehicle for safety. You learn to do all those backing techniques we talked about. And in the over the road, you actually get out and drive the vehicle. There are several new requirements for assessment. In the theory training, you must administer written exams or computerized exams, and students must pass by a minimum of 80%. In the behind the wheel portion, your driving instructor must witness and document competencies. That means, as our instructors watch the students in their driving practice, they will have a sheet in front of them with that student's name, and each day as they go through practice, the teacher will check off what they've seen the student do in backing, in parking, in pre-trip safety, and they will document they see that competence developing, and when we see it at least 5 times, we'll document that they've reached a competency level for that skill. Just a point between us, this makes attendance critical. We do a lot of work trying to keep the students in class and in class regularly, because in the older system, the student could feel that they were ready and they could go test. But at this point, until the instructor can document competence, they are not clear to test. This was just a note to myself, but I'll go ahead and read it out to you. Essentially, what this does is stop a bad student from having a lucky day at testing. Historically, if a student felt they were ready, they just went down to the DPS and said, "I want to test." You know, and sometimes even a really bad driver has a good day and they pass that test. This would stop that happening. You have to show and demonstrate a dependable level of competence before you can even sit for the test at this point. As soon as that person does show competence and they can graduate from the course, the college is now required to enter their graduation in that third-party provider system within 2 days of their graduation, and that clears them to go ahead and take the test. So what this has done is made the whole process extremely sequential. They go to the registry, they find a provider. If they contacted in this area, they would see there's Lamar State College, Port Arthur. So they come to us, they sign up for theory or endorsement, whatever they're studying for. They learn that material. We prove their competence through written exams, and we go, as the ELDT, we certify that we've seen competence. We enter that in the third-party registration system, and that clears them to sit for their learner's permit. They can take it through us because we're an examination center, or they can go and take it at DPS. Once they get that learner's permit, that clears them to apply for skills training at any entry-level driver's training facility. As they get the skills training mastered, the facility who's training them goes to the registry and certifies that they are ready to test. That clears them to be able to test, and they can move forward. It becomes a very linear system. It removes all the potential for self-training that went along the path. I had one more slide, but it didn't seem to have gone in. And one of the other things that's changing, any entry-level driver's training facility that wants to participate must be subject to Federal Motor Safety Carrier audit. So we are already hearing from a lot of the major driving companies who have trained historically that they will not be training their own employees anymore. They don't want Federal Motor Safety Carrier on their property, and they don't want their books subject to audit. It just makes sense. We're in discussions with Coke right now. Coke's trained drivers for a long time, and they're measuring their odds. Budweiser the same. A lot of big companies are saying, do I really want to go through this? So it's a major change to the driving industry. It started today. We will be going up on our prices because of this, and that will affect the contract between us. I don't have final numbers on the price, but within a month I will have numbers to this board. In the interim, we will train under the agreement that is already between us. And until we discuss and come up with a new number, we will just continue to provide service. One good thing, even though I don't know the final numbers for this board, we've always been able to split the cost, so you get to see if a student is committed up front. Because this splits the training into theory and behind the wheel, the theory is actually a fairly short piece, and it's much less expensive than half the course. So as we do come back to you with new prices, there will be a new cutoff point. You'll be able to pay for the theory portion. If the student is committed, they'll finish, and as they go to move on, we would come to you for the second payment. So it gives you actually a better break point. This is what's coming. I just wanted you to all be aware of it. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Yes, Dr. Stafford, thank you for the presentation foremost, and thanks for sharing that updated information. I can see how that can have some curbing effects
Yes, sir.
to the transportation industry. But my question to you would be is that, does this only affect local drivers, or what about the ones that are over the road that may go through inclement weather? Because you know we have different weather patterns these days. Things. How would that affect those that do over the road?
Yes, sir. It will affect drivers throughout the United States, no exceptions. Within 6 months, when that window closes for someone who already holds a learner's permit, every driver must go through this training. And the new curriculums do include material about driving in inclement weather. Now, I can't simulate ice, but we will cover in theory what it's like to drive in that kind of inclement weather.
Okay. And also, you mentioned something in your presentation about hazardous material. Will the drivers be responsible just for the transportation of the hazardous material, or will the organization be responsible for the proper positioning within those different containers, the material that they are carrying? Who will have the responsibility for that?
The packaging of the material would come from the shipper or the owner, depending on who is sending it. But the driver would be required to review the packaging and make certain it is appropriate, to adequately store that material in their vehicle and secure it appropriately. And depending on the vehicle, that can be a very different process. And they would have to know from the shipping information what they're taking onto their vehicle so that they can respond properly. So the first piece of your question, who packages it? The shipper packages it. But the driver must correctly interpret the package, interpret the directions, and then store it safely in their vehicle. And that's with the hazardous material endorsement.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any others?
I have one question. You did mention that beginning today, that this policy will begin.
Yes, ma'am.
How long will they give you before you penalize for not being certified under this program?
Today. There's actually that brief window, the 6-month window, if you already hold the learner's permit.
Right.
They've given a 6-month window that you could continue to self-train and then get a license through regular testing. But beyond that, everything stopped today. We are literally drowning in calls at the college, especially for the hazmat endorsement. And that's big business in our area. Right now, the SIMPRA project is still doing groundwork. So they're hiring a lot of dump trucks, and people are moving a lot of dirt. Because of where the dirt is and what the refinery will be used for, the potential traces of chemicals that may be in that dirt, those drivers actually have to sit for the hazmat endorsement, even though they're hauling dirt, but the dirt can have chemical exposure from the petrochemical companies. So all of those drivers may need the hazmat endorsement, and the only way to get it now is to come and be trained. And as the Golden Pass project kicks in, conceivably first quarter next year, there will again be an enormous flood in business for dump truck drivers who will need that endorsement. And there's no leeway after today. You must come through. As a matter of fact, that's how we're getting the calls. All these drivers are showing up at DPS ready to test. And they're saying, I want to sit for the hazmat endorsement. And they're telling them, sorry, go be trained.
How long has it been in place? Because we just hearing about today, which is effective today. So why didn't we hear it before now?
Okay, let me walk you through it. These changes were authored in 2016 for implementation in 2019. The way the Federal Motor Safety Carrier works, they're over all federal licensing that affect commercial drivers. However, they author the license and publish them. Those rules come to the states, and each state will then interpret that into the laws of its state and enforce it. Texas can be very hard-headed at times, and so Texas took the 2016 rules in 2017 and did not ratify them. They didn't turn them into state law. They looked at them again in 2019 and they did not ratify them. They looked at them again in 21 and they did not ratify them in the session or in each of the special sessions. And we all thought, this won't happen again. I mean, until the state ratifies it, it's not state law. So you could still have gotten the license here, even though you couldn't have gotten it in another state. After the final special session, apparently the governor called the Department of Public Safety, DPS, which does all the license testing. And he told them, we will honor this rule, even though I have not managed to get it through the legislation. DPS then called the college because we are a third-party examiner. Because we're a state agency, I support other state agencies. So we have a contract to support DPS by conducting knowledge and skills exams for these licenses. They called me and said, Governor says we're doing it. So as of this date, nobody tests unless they've come through this. And that's why we're here at the last minute and struggling to catch up, but we're going to make it. Yes, ma'am. I hope it makes sense. Amen. Amen. Can I answer any other questions? Okay.
Stafford, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And again, if anyone would like, if the board would like to go through a more in-depth training, if y'all would let me know a time, I will come and bring you through that training.
Thank you.
Moving to
Yes, sir, will do.
communications, we have none. We have no additional speakers for today, so we're moving straight to reports. Workforce development report, George?
Okay, of course, the CDL program is first on the report. She did mention that Dr. Stafford was going to do his presentation. 16 students have enrolled in the class that started today, and 2 are going to be enrolled in the March 7th class. 3 are currently in the class from January, so you have a total of 21 students in the CDL program. Well, will be in there after March. With the Digital Workforce Academy, it's successfully ongoing, and looks like she says that they're splitting the training into 2 sessions. Session 1 is complete. They're awaiting job placement, and she's going to give updates in the future about what's going on with the Digital Workforce Academy. The scholarship program, still going on, of course, and we lost 2 of the recipients, one to GPA and one transferred to a university, so they're no longer going to get the scholarship, of course. And I know she did mention that she's already talking to the counselors at the CATE program about the YEP and getting things out for the scholarship. And I think that's all on the workforce report. Yeah, that's it.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What about Source One?
Say it again?
Source One, you know, when the subcontractors want to hire Port Arthur residents and they notify the EDC and
Right.
we go through their system and we refer them.
Yes.
Okay, what's the status on that? I mean, how do we track that?
Well, I know she does have a drawer of files for those individuals, and if they're coming from the Texas workforce, we do have that database as the first source referral.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How about including that one in your report?
Okay, I'll
So-
tell her.
So we'll know how many
What?
people we're referring to these subcontractors in the industry.
Okay, will do.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Like I didn't have it. Oh, is that working?
Commissioner, do we have any additional questions for the workforce report?
Huh?
Okay. Moving forward to program compliance report. George, do we have anything to report there?
Okay, Crystal had an emergency, and I do believe that she had a report with her, so what I will make sure of is that we'll send it out to you guys. First thing tomorrow? Yeah, first thing tomorrow, if she returns tomorrow.
Moving forward from there to the financial report. Rachel?
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
We'll start the report with our statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. And give Mr. Doucette a chance to find this report.
All right, then. No, it's a senior moment.
Okay, I'll just give a brief summary so that Mr. Doucette can keep up with the numbers once we start reading them. In that first column, we have our projections for this fiscal year. In the second column, where you see actual, that's the actual expenditures as of that date, and then the unrealized revenue. Everything else that falls underneath just is the debt service, and we're going to finally come into our final number. Okay. October this fiscal year, we projected $5,500,000 in sales tax. As of January 31st, 2022, $2,255,944 of revenue has been received, leaving us an unrealized revenue for fiscal year 2022 of $3,244,056. We projected $20,000 in interest revenue. As of January 31st, 2022, there is no interest revenue, which still leaves us with the unrealized revenue for fiscal year 2022 of $20,000. Our rental income was projected at $66,975,000. Actual as of January 31st, 2022 is $20,325,000, leaving an unrealized revenue of $46,650. Business park assessment fees was projected at $70,800, as of January 31st, 2022, the revenue for business park assessment is $46,685,000, leaving an unrealized revenue for fiscal year 2022 of $24,115. Our land sales is projected at $310,500. As of January 31st, we have sold no land, leaving us with the unrealized revenue of $310,500. The transfer from the general fund is the lease income on the press building. We projected that at $72,000. As of January 31st, 2022, we have $24,000 in revenue and an unrealized revenue of $48,000 for the rest of the year. Our total projected revenue for fiscal year 2022 is $6,040,275,000. Our actual, as of January 31st, 2022, is $2,352,974, leaving us an unrealized revenue of $3,687,301 for the fiscal year. Our expenditures as of January 31st in personnel services is $238,083, supplies $13,105, maintenance $23,938, contractual services $169,743, capital outlay, I'm sorry, I think I got a little off here. Okay, that's the capital outlay, I apologize. The total expenditures for January 2022 is $1,206,341. The excess of a revenue over the expenditures is $4,833,934. Our debt service is $877,098 for the fiscal year. So far, we have transferred in $292,399 of that debt service, leaving us $584,699 left to fund. Our transfer to Fund 612 is $8,600. Our administrative cost to the City of Port Arthur is projected at $175,000. Our Parks and Rec, that is a grant, right, to the Parks and Rec Department for $1 million, leaving our total other sources and uses of funds at $1,183,600. That leaves us a net change in fund balance of $2,773,236. Our estimated fund balance at the beginning of the year is $4,501,694, leaving us an estimated fund balance at the end of the year as of January 2022 of $7,274,930. Again, the information right behind that sheet lists all your line items, and these are the numbers that make up the expenditures on the first sheet. So if you have a question and you're just looking at, let's just say, supplies and materials, and you want to know exactly what made up that number, you'll see it's office supplies, fuel and lube, mining equipment, IT equipment, those things. The sales tax revenue for Port Arthur for January was $1,669,071 for a total of $6,744,809, and that's at the very last sheet, I'm sorry, sales tax revenue. EDC at this time with our sales tax revenue and also the sales tax for water revenue is $2,248,269.60. I can tell you everything is looking okay, it's strong. I don't see any weakness. We're not in the red anywhere, and right now we have a sustainable budget and we should be okay for the rest of the fiscal year. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this last sheet, we're talking about sales tax.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's for January. When you list that amount, that's how much we received this month?
The total, yes, sir. The total
1
sales
million.
tax for the city of Port Arthur is at the top there, and then we,
Right, the one for January?
yes, sir.
Okay, that's 1 million?
Yes, sir.
600? Okay, for 21. So actually, this is turning out to a better year than
It
in
is.
the past. Okay, so is that a reason for, go back to the front sheet? Because I was looking at the front sheet with our revenues. Okay, we went to rental, and we had 67,000, and I do all the hard numbers. And so far in rental, we've collected like 20, right?
20,000, yes, sir.
Yeah, and we've only like 4 months
Yes, sir.
and things. So you're looking at 3 times. We come out up with that one. Then we go to the business park. We have the 71,000, and after 4 months, we like almost at 50. So what's happening there that we got so much money that we going to supersede what we actually budgeted for?
And the line items that you just spoke of, all of them, the sales tax and each one, for the rental income.
No, the business park.
Oh,
right
the
now.
business park?
Yeah, the rental is good.
Well,
I
the
understand.
business park actually is probably not going to reach that 70,800. Our projection might be a little bit higher, because what happens is the assessment is due December the 31st of the year for, this is calendar year 2021. So they have until December the 31st to pay their assessment fee. So I think there's only 2 business owners in the business park that have not paid their assessment thus far. Everyone else have already paid their assessment for this year.
Okay.
So that line item always is kind of projected a little bit higher, kind of probably more projecting that we might sell some additional land or get a new. I think they have a couple of spots open in that business park that might get filled. So that line item is always a little bit higher than it probably should be.
Okay, the last question that I had was, the land sale. You know, I noticed that it was projected in the budget to sell
And that's another one that's actually,
$300,000.
Right.
I mean, $310,000 worth of land.
yeah, we actually have something, I think, right now. George probably want to speak a little bit on that.
Go ahead.
So on that one, like she said, the projection basically comes off of people that have told us that, hey, we're probably going to look into getting a couple of more acres. On today's agenda, we're going to discuss selling 2 acres, and then the rest of them, again, are expansions where people already have property in the park and say they want to add, a couple of acres on the side of it. So that's where we get these projections from. It's something that was discussed with the business owners when we were doing the budget itself. So let's say 310, so that's about
Well, we usually
level 5 acres.
Yeah, we usually project about 5 acres
Yeah.
a year.
And like I said, we discussing selling a little over 2 on the agenda, and then again, you have the remainder till October to sell the other 3.
Right.
Well,
And as usually, let's say we're actually getting ready to start looking at the budget again here pretty soon. So we'll be looking at this year, last year, and trying to get those projections a little closer.
That was going to be my point.
Yes.
You know, whenever you do a budget, the budget is based on previous
Yeah,
years,
historical.
and
Right.
that way you're more conservative
Right.
with your budget, and you don't have to be projecting this high deal. So if you're going to do land, what you would do land is you look at last year and the year before. And if you average 5 acres, then that's what you project.
Yes, sir.
And therefore, when we're looking at numbers, we can look at realistic numbers and numbers we can say we're right on time, but if we project it higher, and we're not doing it, then it's because we're going to come in as not meeting the revenue. And
Probably not so much in each line item, but when you look at the total revenue,
I'm not talking about that. I'm just sticking with
yeah, you're just sticking with
the questions I
Right,
had. That was
okay.
the rental, the land, and stuff, because those are the ones that you see,
Right,
the disparity.
right,
In, are we going to come, or are we not?
right.
That's the only reason I asked for those particulars, okay?
And I can tell you, Mr. Doucette, that the rest of the budget is done that way. When you're looking at the expenditures for office supplies and going forward, I look at the historical, the last couple years, the last 3 years, and then take an average of how much we feel that, that will cost us in the upcoming year. So we have a new budget to do. We have a new budget that's going to be coming along with the new CEO. So I'm looking forward to that, and we'll see what goes from there.
Okay, because it's just odd that someone would have a revenue as selling land. I mean, you don't know if you're going to sell land or not.
Yeah, it's
You know-
been projected that way. Mr. Baptiste has always projected it that way. Correct.
Well, maybe we need to take a look at projecting based on the previous year.
Yes, sir.
If
No
you look
problem.
you look at the large size.
Okay.
All budget items is based on your previous years. And that way you can always have a conservative budget.
Yes, sir.
And you don't have to worry about having these funny numbers or be wondering, well, we don't come in under it. We don't have to come in under it. Okay?
I agree. Thank you
Thank-
so much, Mr. Doucette.
Okay,
Any
thank-
other questions?
I had a question, but Mr. Doucette covered it all.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Doucette.
Thank you, board. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Rachel. The next agenda item is going to be Community and Business Center report. George, do we have anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Ta-da.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
So we have some things to discuss tonight.
Okay.
As you can see, it's February, so our general contractor did not meet our January 31st promise of substantial completion on the building. And like I told y'all last month, I think it'll be March. I'm thinking more like May. So let's talk about it. You still have some materials they can't obtain because of COVID. You still have some answers they're waiting on from the architects. Once the architects give them an answer, we still have to approve it. Let's take, for example, the material that was originally selected for the monument stairs, the stairs in the lobby and the atrium, where there's a section for people to sit and converse. That material wasn't fire rated for vertical installation. So we had to go back to the drawing board on that, for example. Once the architect sends that sample and I approve it, hopefully I approve it, then, you've got a lead time of about 3 weeks to get that material in, and then that LVT has to acclimate to the building before it can be installed. Today, while I walk the building, there's some light fixtures on the second floor that need to be moved over about a foot. So the architects have to respond to all of these requests for information before, the contractor can continue. You'll see on the agenda tonight that one thing is an increase in the cost of the freezer for the lease kitchen. Two things about that. There wasn't a standard AIA contract entered into for our kitchen equipment. That was before my time. I can't answer as to why. We did pay a deposit on a quote for that kitchen equipment, but the kitchen equipment quote clearly states that it's only valid for a certain amount of time. There's not a contractor in America that's going to build that freezer out for $46,000. They'll build it out for $42,000. We're going to have to pay that difference. The second part of that is that there's a lead time on the fire retardant material, because remember when we had trouble getting the roofing insulation, and because of a fire, and there's only 2 manufacturers that make that material? Well, that material is also made by the manufacturer that had that fire. So, and I did call Commercial Kitchens and some other vendors just to fact check our current kitchen equipment vendor, and they say they have freezers and coolers that are 40 weeks out. So even if you guys approve this tonight and the council approves it in March, we may not have a kitchen to lease in that building until the fourth quarter of this year. And there's not anything that our general contractor can do about that. With that being said, Lamar's continuing to hold classes. They have access to their upstairs classroom. There's a really big Skills USA competition going on there February 11th. And Bistro 549, a complete downtown Starbucks-like bistro, is scheduled to open sometime next week. The kitchen vendor did come down and make sure that, you know, everything is everything with the bistro equipment, the backflow equipment, and things like that, so we're ready to go. The EOC lease was negotiated and approved. It's currently in the signature process. And I have a meeting with the emergency management team this week just to solidify their schedule of who has access to what and who I can expect to be in that space, you know, at what time, because of course everybody won't have access to that entire space. And we also have to discuss with them that we're utilizing, you know, some of their space at this moment. I have received 2 other letters of interest. I believe I pretty much have all of the office space with the exception of 2 downstairs offices leased. On the agenda as well, you have where I'd like to approve a rental amount, and I'd like to do the base rent amount of $1.35 plus the 14-cent in CAM, and not include it like we did for the EOC. I'd like to charge $1.35 plus the 14-cent in CAM so we can try to, you know, generate some revenue. And then I'd like to, just to let you know that this is a process that'll be part of the budget process every year. Other property owners downtown I've been in contact with, they plan to raise their rental rates to this amount so that, you know, we have a true fair market value of downtown office space in downtown Port Arthur. And then every year we'll get with the commercial broker, reevaluate things, see where we are, see where our, you know, local competitors are with their vacancy rates and how successful their realtors have been at renting the space at that price, and see if we can increase it at that point. And so then we can project those increased rental rates in the next fiscal year budget. And I believe that's all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I do. So the kitchen, that's, you said that's not gonna be available till May?
No, I don't believe that I'll be in the building until May. I don't believe the kitchen will be ready until the fourth quarter of this year.
Oh, so the fourth quarter?
Right, because we won't be able to get a CO. We won't be able to operate a restaurant without a walk-in cooler and freezer. And I don't think that's gonna happen until October, November of this year.
We don't have we don't have like another option with that space to where we can't do anything with it?
You basically have already purchased, you know, $150,000 worth of kitchen equipment that's currently being installed, with the exception of the freezer, because that's what can't be built out.
Okay.
Come back to me when somebody else got a question.
Okay, I have one. Okay. Janet,
Yes, sir.
we're talking about the delays.
Yes, sir.
What did the contract say about the time that the building will be completed?
The hard part about that contract, after reviewing it once I got here, is that there's pretty much not anything in our favor. At this point, the only thing we could do is pull a performance bond and hire a new contractor. But at this point, a lot of things, and I'm not saying that they've been perfect, and I'm not saying that they've adhered to the schedule, but we've had a lot of COVID-related delays.
You know, COVID, everybody using COVID for an excuse, okay?
And they are, and Go ahead, but the last contractor was out for 2 weeks. Their entire crew had COVID.
Okay, but I'm saying right now,
Yes, sir.
everybody talk COVID, okay? So if we didn't have in the contract where the contractor will have this building done at this time, and then any time after that, they will be assessed a penalty, we need to start including that in our contracts.
Yes, sir, I agree.
We can't go back.
No.
And I don't, it's nothing to debate. It's just that it's all about how we do business. So in the future, we need to have, when someone signed the contract, and go with calendar days.
Yes, sir.
Don't do go with calendar days. That means he works on weekend, he works on Sundays, and he works to get the job done at this time. And at the time job is not done at that time, then he's going to start losing money, and we're going to gain money. So the inconvenience and the time we wait, we make money on it instead of not having what we paying him for at the time he said he's going to do it. It's water under the bridge at this point, but it's about how we do business in the future, where we don't be the ones being dragged along and have to accept anything, because if a person had COVID and they were out 2 weeks, for an example, if you had 8 months to do the job, you was off 2 weeks, that just means you got to work later in the evenings, you got to work on Sundays, you got to work on holidays, but that's on you.
Yes, sir, and these guys have, but I understand what you're saying. Future contract.
It's all about understanding what I'm saying. I passed here many days, nobody wasn't working. So it ain't like anybody could tell me. So it's about how we do business. Contracts. We said you're going to do it in these many days. So if you don't work, we don't care. But come that day, we start collecting. You find out that people start finishing on time, okay?
Yes, sir.
So that's the only question I had about that contract is, we're going too far out of our way for things, because if he had been moving in a timely manner, he would have reached these problems in advance. So we'd still had time enough to get those things resolved and still be on schedule. But if he's late, then when he get to this phase and he's late, he's extended. So
Yes,
now
sir.
he's at the end, so we standing. So let's just take a look at our contracts in the future.
Trust me, I read it back and forth. I tried, but yes, sir, I understand. Yes, ma'am.
How far are we behind, and how much out of budget are we regarding this project due to the fact that we are so late in
Well,
getting everything completed?
The contract was a guaranteed maximum price contract.
Okay.
So we have not exceeded that guaranteed maximum price, and neither will we exceed it. Those guys have been very diligent about that. Where I would see where we're having financial repercussions from the delays would be things like this freezer. And we've had like the cost of steel going up quite a bit during the project. I think steel for one area went up about $15,000. Those kinds of things, but we have not exceeded the guaranteed maximum price on the contract.
I'll see that we are.
No,
according
ma'am.
to- okay.
I think I got the other question. You said that everything, so all the other spaces are pretty much either rented out or is about to be rented except the kitchen.
Correct.
So, okay, so everything else is pretty much covered. And then
Pretty much
also,
spoken for.
okay, I heard you state that, I think the Bistro place, whose space we gonna be taking up? You said we gonna be in somebody's space for,
No, the Bistro belongs to Lamar. When I was talking about the EOC.
yeah, somebody's
us using
space, you
like-
said, yeah, we was using somebody's space.
We have some items stored in their break room, so we're gonna have to talk to them about that.
Yeah, so would the rental agreement affect that? Will we have to make some adjustments to that because of that?
We're gonna talk about it on Thursday, but I'm bringing croissants and donuts, so hopefully.
Bring them coffee too? Because we gonna need it if we gonna, we gotta, because I'm pretty sure you quoted them rent for this space.
Correct. And
Now
so-
we're going to go back and tell them, hey, we got some supplies in here.
Correct.
So they, if I was them, I would want to,
Concession.
yeah,
Yes,
I
sir.
would want something. So that's why I
I'm
was asking.
prepared. I have a
Okay.
night,
You gotta remember, they've been letting it sit there for free for a few months too now.
well, yeah, we have.
Oh, see, I didn't know that
Like,
part.
wait.
Okay, I didn't know that part. I just was saying, I know she said that somebody's space was being somewhat utilized by us. So, me,
No, I got
being
you.
me,
Right.
we're gonna have to talk.
We're gonna call it a wash.
Yeah, well, that's what they're using these days, so I guess so. Yeah, we'll get it a wash then. Nah, that was the other question though.
Yeah. And again, if anybody would like to tour it at any time, just let me know.
Anna? We'll move now to the interim CEO report. George? Okay. So moving forward with the agenda, we have no unfinished business, so we move into consent agenda items number 1, to discuss possible consideration the approval of the purchase agreement with John Crane Incorporated for the sale of approximately 2.1 acres of land in the Spur 93 Business Park. George?
Okay, on this one, I'm gonna ask that you guys table this. Today, we had a 2:30 meeting with their lawyers, our lawyer, and I don't feel comfortable with us moving forward until both parties in total agreement, so I'm gonna ask that you table this one.
What was the disagreement, George?
It was several things. One, they were discussing the mineral rights, and it was just a. Let me see this. Austin, did Jesse fill you in earlier? Okay, I don't know if he's in. Anyway, it was just several sections that they were going back and forth about, and our lawyer, of course, is protecting the EDC. And the things that the lady was saying was that she's never heard of some of these, right, the covenants that's already in, because, for example, one of them was, we talk about after 18 months, if you're not at a certain point that we could take the land back and things like that. And so I was explaining to them how our board operates. If we see that you're actually building and doing stuff, just come to the board. But, you know, they wanted it hard where we just say, no, we're not going to do it. And we'd have to go back into the covenants and all of that. So, like I said, I just ask that you guys table it maybe, you know, until next meeting, so that way both sides will be on the same page.
And George, this is Austin.
Oh, there you
Can you hear me?
go. Yes, sir, go ahead.
I just wanted to see, I know Jesse Lopez from our office was in that meeting earlier, and I hadn't got a chance to catch up with him, but when I talked to him this morning, he said they felt like they were pretty close, but it sounds like they weren't able to hammer out all the details.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, tabling it.
Yes.
Pretty close is my understanding, though. There's not going to be an issue getting it done. It just, they had some questions. So.
Right.
Very good. Okay.
Okay. Shall we offer a motion? It has been recommended we table this item. Item number 1, consent agenda item, and I'm open to the motion.
I make a motion that we table item number 1 in the consent agenda.
Second.
It has been motioned, it has moved and been seconded to table consent agenda item number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Non-consent agenda items. Number 1, to discuss possible consideration approval for a rental rate for lease space at the press building. George?
Yes, sir. As Jana just explained, we're going to ask that you guys approve a lease rate for everyone else in the building outside of the EOC and Lamar. We do know that the fair market value was in the $1.35 area, and we're going to add the 14 cent for the CAM, so we're asking you guys to approve the $1.49 a square foot.
I have a question. If we have to rent space by the market rate, and we have someone in the building that has it at this rate, and then we have another tenant paying a different rate, how does that make it? I mean, why aren't we having one rate that every tenant in the building is paying? Because we're supposed to be renting the building, or anything we rent or lease should be market rate. So if we establish market rate for one tenant, shouldn't that have been for all tenants?
Well, with Lamar, we were able to give a concession because they're actually providing economic development through job training and education. With the EOC, disaster funds were used from the Economic Development Administration to procure the federal grant in order to construct the building, and that's why we were able to give them a little concession, but that is a one-year annual lease to be negotiated by the board and the council during budget season each time. So it won't come up this year because we just did it, but next calendar year, we'll go back to negotiating that rate. And then on, just in general with renting, you know, if I lease 9 out of the 10 spaces and somebody really wants it, I might charge them $1.85. There's nothing saying I can't do it.
It's nothing said we can't do it, but it's the way about doing business.
Yes, sir. But I
Okay?
can,
It's not I.
Well-
It's about doing business. You know, what you do with one, you know, it travels on what we do. If we have exceptions to where we can come in at market rate, or we could go below market rate, because if it's written that we can do it, for examples, we are partnering for training, so I'm quite sure that there's a limitation, okay? When we're talking about the EOC, we're talking about something that benefits not only this city, but it benefits citizens, because it's an operation for any time of disaster. So I'm quite sure that that gives us some leeway. But when we're talking about individuals who are not falling in those categories, it seems like we would establish one
And that's what we're doing.
fee.
Right.
Yes, well, what was the 14 cent?
that's common area maintenance. That's to pay for the janitorial, and all of our utilities they're not sub-metered. It's all master metered, so the 14 cent covers their utilities and their common area maintenance.
That basically would be included in the lease agreement. That's the fee. If we're going to include that automatically, then it's not a separate fee, right? It's just a fee, you know?
Separate fee.
See, here's the thing too, when we went to TML over the EOC deal, we had to go with the fair market rate. So what we're doing here is saying, okay, if we have the 135 just based off of the lease space for the fair market, that CAM still has to be included.
Yeah, George, I understood that part of it. You know, that's why I was saying, you know, when you say establish a rate and add the 14 cent, you know, well, we just come up with a rate and the 14 cent is added, when that's what goes up for leasing. So when you start advertising for leasing the space, it has this price for leasing.
Well, because what we're trying to do is create a fair market value for the downtown ecosystem. And what we're saying is our fair market value, based on what our commercial realtor experts, subject matter experts said, was $1.35. Somebody else with an office building downtown 2 blocks away may not charge common area maintenance. They may, you know, you may be responsible for your own space. This also allows us to look at our utility and janitorial expenditures and adjust that rate, even if we decide not to increase the rental rate.
I got a question real quick.
I think I got it. I think you're saying the same thing that I had a question about. It's just that you got two different costs. You got a building cost, and then you want to say, let's charge extra. And I'm a customer like you.
And that's
like
what I was about to get at.
You lease a building. If you lease a building, they're going to charge you so much for square foot. But then again, if they're going to do your janitorial,
trash.
and
you got
stuff,
a
they're
whole
gonna
nother
add
cost.
to that lease,
There
and
you
then
go.
that would be your lease agreement.
That's how it go.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, now that's what I,
There you go.
Because that's what I'm about to say. I think your bottom line is what you're getting at,
Yes.
the 149.
Yeah, you just,
There you go.
It's just two separate, it's two separate
But it
things.
gives the board leeway if our expenditures
Exceed,
exceed
We
that
can go up.
14 cents, then we have leeway to go back and adjust that in the
Right.
lease.
right. I got you.
Welcome back, Mr. Doucette. You asked him?
You got it? Okay.
Oh, okay.
They cover it.
So if the board is okay with it, we're trying to establish that rate that Mr. Doucette was talking about at 149 a square foot, the bottom line.
So move.
Second.
It has been moved and second that we accept the total lease amount being $1.49 per square foot. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Non-consent agenda item number 2, to discuss possible consideration of approval of the change order regarding walk-in cooler freezer for the lease kitchen at 549 4th Street.
The difference in the cost, if you look on the back page, page 3, is $6,004.78. So that's all I'm asking the board to approve tonight. You've already approved the other, expenditure. I'm just asking the board to approve the additional $6,004.78.
This the same freezer or just a different?
It's the same freezer.
And they just went up like that?
That though, could-
And actually, it did,
It
but
did,
he's giving us a deal.
Well, I know, I mean,
okay.
I'm looking at things.
I like to hear deals, so
Yeah.
I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and second that we accept the additional cost for the freezer, cooler freezer for the lease kitchen at 549 4th Street. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Non-consent agenda item number 3, to discuss with possible consideration the approval of terms and conditions and infrastructure economic incentive agreement with the Balloon Barn. George?
Okay, you guys remember, the lady came in talking about needing the infrastructure for the balloon barn, alongside of the clubhouse. She turned in all of her expenses, and of course, we can offer up to 40% for the reimbursement. And so I provided you guys with the total expenses and that 40%, and I'm asking that you approve that for the terms and conditions of the agreement.
I have a question on that due to, I'm trying to find, okay, here, go right here. On the Exertive Electric, I see that's we had offered how much the last time? How much we approved to get them, 12,000, 18? How much was it the last time they came?
No,
No, we don't think we ever.
we
did.
never approved any amount.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm concerned about the electric incorporated for 38,000. Did our engineers ever went out to confirm?
What
it
happened-
cost that much to,
Yes, ma'am. What ended up happening was she didn't turn in the lighting for the parking lot. And I think that might be the sheet you're talking about where it was
Yeah.
originally lower. And so what happened, she came back and that was verified with the lighting of that entire parking lot.
It's the same place, George, there was at the daycare that she's gonna be trying to do multiple things,
Yes,
like
sir.
rent it out?
The kind of like a rental hall and a splash pad was the other
Gotcha.
thing. But of course, the splash pad, we couldn't reimburse her for none of that. So it was
Right.
basically the parking
Yeah, I-
lot, the sand.
Well, initially, she had no lighting at all.
No.
Okay.
And that's why I think, Ms. Raymond, when you were talking about the lower number last time, because that 38 wasn't included in that. Yes, ma'am.
So we can offer her the 18,000?
Yes, sir.
All right, so move.
I second.
It has been moved and second that we accept the additional, the bid for $18,000 for the balloon pad, the balloon barn, excuse me. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. To discuss the possible consideration legal counsel for PADC, George?
Okay, everybody that was at the joint meeting, I know you guys remember in the discussion, basically it was the two options, either to go with the second most qualified person out of those four, or to basically send the RFQ back out. So somebody make the motion on what you guys are going to decide.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I think from the special meeting and the joint meeting we had with the city, I think the group consensus was to go back out for bid because none of the attorneys had economic development experience. Correct me if I'm wrong, fellow commissioners.
Oh, that's correct.
Oh, that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm willing to accept the motion.
I move that we go back out for bids for our legal counsel for PAEDC.
A second.
It has been moved and second that we go back out for bid for legal counsel for the PADC. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Non-consent agenda item number 5, to discuss the possible consideration the PAD's Interim Ceo Agreement requested by Board President Jerry LeBeouf, who is not here today, but I'm sitting in for him. George?
After having a discussion with Mr. LeBeouf, he wanted this placed on here basically to discuss the termination of the Interim CEO Agreement. I know it has been discussed that the CEO should be here February 22nd. I will update you guys in executive session on that process. It is, moving along. And so Mr. LeBeouf and I both had a discussion basically due to what the agreement states that we terminate the contract for the interim CEO on the after the workday of the 21st, since she'll be here on the 22nd.
A question.
Yes, sir.
Will that give enough time for carryover and transfer of information?
Yep.
Projects to make sure she has a full understanding of where we are before we terminate?
Yes, sir. So on that note, in executive session when we're discussing the overseer operations position, that answers that half of it.
Okay, so I think Darrell?
What you got?
How do those two things tie together?
Well, say for example, when the agreement was set up, whenever the interim CEO isn't here, the overseer operation handles all the duties, correct?
Right.
So if the interim leaves permanently, the overseer operation fills in the CEO the same way.
Yeah, but I thought both of those positions end at the same time.
No, that's y'all discussion in the executive session.
Okay.
Let me not get
It's up to you guys, so the pleasure of the board.
Let me not get ahead of myself. I apologize.
No problem.
You said?
I'll make a motion that we table number 5 until after the executive session.
It has been moved and second that
Well,
we
not-
table.
We'll
Well,
bring
we
it
could
in
say,
executive session.
we could hold it. No, we have to bring it back out. Just hold it until after the executive session, then we'll reconsider it.
Okay.
So that's all we need to do. We come back to it after the executive session.
All right. It has been
Moved.
to be held until after executive session.
There you go.
Okay, agenda item number 6, to discuss the possible consideration entering into a contract for administrative purposes with the city of Port Arthur. George?
Okay, as you guys know, we've been going back and forth, like Mr. Harris said about the wash. The last numbers we received was a 6%, well, no, he went down to 6 at the joint meeting. The city manager brought it down to 6%. However, when we came back, we looked at the numbers again. With the addition of the equipment that these guys will have in the building, it's like $32,000 worth of equipment. So I've informed the city manager that 6% actually has to come down to 4.5, which would bring our administrative fee to $100,427, because that fee that they're being tacked on is not a part of the lease, which we talked about. The wash was for the lease and administrative fee. So in order for that to work out for us not to lose, they have to bring that 6% down to 4.5. Like I said, I've discussed that with the city manager, and I'm just asking that, you guys, if you understand what I'm saying, if not, I will, Mr. Anderson, what
So
you...
now just point of clarity for me. Now this 100,000 is what our actual lease would be.
That's what our administrative rate would be. Because remember, that EOC lease is at 132,000.
Right.
We can't be charged the same amount, because then we would lose out and have to pay ourselves. We'd have to pay for the 30-something.
I've been saying that the whole time.
Well, that's why
So
we
now
bring it down. That's why we have to bring it down.
Okay,
You got it?
I'm good.
All right.
I have a,
Go ahead, Mr.
I have a question about administrative fees. We should never talk administrative fees, just my opinion. If we're going to talk about the rental or the lease of that building by the city, okay? Administrative fees are supposed to be fees we pay the city for services that they render to us. And those should be determined by, one, the service that they render. Specifically, what are you doing? How many people it takes to do this? How much time it takes for this person to do this? How many times this person does this a month? Once? Twice? If you're talking about personnel services you're going to provide to us, okay, what are you going to charge us for any type of service that we may require you to do? Because when you look at the employees over here, they very seldom need anything from the city. So you can't charge us for services you're not performing. It says we must pay for services that is rendered. Therefore, I'm in favor of us revisiting this and have the city to understand that you need to look at what you're actually going to do, and you invoice us. We don't need to be talking about the lease of the building and washing out. We don't, that's two different animals. If we're going to pay administrative fees, we're going to pay for service you render. We're not going to pay fees for you to make a certain amount of money. I don't know if that was the intent. Maybe they just took a look at getting something that they would be serving us. But we as board members and a board here at the Economic Development Corporation, we must understand we should pay for services rendered. And if somebody's going to charge us, we need to have something to support us paying this money, not no percentage. It's no way services could be charged to us by no percentage. That was the first ridiculous thing that I've heard. Okay, you can't do that. I'm all for paying the fees. And I heard a comment made to you all that, is our attorney on the line, George? Find out if he's...
Austin, you still there?
I'm gonna come off of mute.
Look like you're on mute, Austin.
He's on mute.
Yeah, he's right here. You can see
Yes,
his
sir.
name's
I'm
on
here.
mic is here.
Okay, there you go.
Is he on?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Austin.
Yes, I'm sorry. I hear the question.
Yes, the question, I heard a statement made a couple of weeks ago by the city attorney that stated that the EDC must pay administrative fees to the city. It was also stated that it is against the law if they do not pay fees. Now, everything that I've read says the EDC may pay administrative fees. There's nothing that says we have to. Now, do you know of anything in writing that says we must pay?
So I think that the idea is that if you didn't have an agreement in place, that by default you would probably be invoiced. And I think the purpose of the agreement is really just to limit the cost, if anything. The danger in not having an agreement in place, some of those services would still be provided, but the board would have less control over what what the price of all that was, I guess.
Okay.
So you run the risk that it ends up costing more money to not have an agreement in place.
Let me ask the question again. The question were, is there anything written that says the EDC must pay administrative fees? What I read says may pay fees. And the reason I'm saying it for all board members, for your information, in 2012 approximately, the reason the administrative fees went away, I was on council. And the EDC asked council to drop the administrative fees because they were asking citizens to allow them to give money in a proposition to the city for streets, and they were like $1 million a year for 3 years, and then after that it was $1 million for part. But because the EDC was getting $1 million back to help the city in areas that the city was responsible for, the council elected to drop the fees. At the time it was like $85,000. But that's how the fees went away. Okay, the city attorney was in the meeting, but she said she don't know how they went away. I was a council member. It went away because of the money the EDC was giving the city through the proposition to help with streets. That's why the administrative fees were dropped. And $85,000 compared to $1 million, it wasn't a hard decision for us, okay? So that's how come we drop it. And I'm not against paying administrative fees, but I'm against paying for fees that's not provided, okay? The service we pay for should be some that we know. So the method in which you determine the administrative fees should be based on the service you will provide us. And that's what we should do. And it's nothing about no percentage. You can't figure out administrative fees for percentage because we're supposed to be paying for the service that was provided. Okay, so I just feel that we need to check on that. And I asked the attorney, once again, my question to you is, what I've read said that we may pay fees, and I just gave example on how the fees were stopped in the past, and I'm not against paying fees now, but I also want to clarify that statement that we must, that it's against the law if we do not pay fees. Where is that written?
And that's certainly something we could look into.
Yes, please do.
And I do know that when these discussions came up, initially that was one of the issues was accounting for the cost. The city kind of just gives a lump sum or a whole variety of different services. And I think that was, when Frank and I discussed it previously, it was definitely in the in y'all's interest to, trying to itemize that a little more, because there was just no way that all the services listed added up to, I believe it was like 130,000 or so per year.
You know, I can understand a lump sum. A lump sum. A lump sum is something we all, we're doing prior to that. But the problem is, when a lump sum is an amount that washes out with what your rental agreement with is, that's a problem. Now you need to show the services that you're providing in which you get a lump sum. So I think you got, that's a question I have, and you need to get it for us at the next meeting, because I don't see where is anything written that says it's against the law for us not to pay an administrative fees. It's just not the case. The other thing is, we could pay a lump sum, but tell us what service you providing, because when you start talking about the amount of money that have been said, and I'm trying to think what you could possibly be doing, because we have a finance person here. The finance person actually keeps time cards, place the information in the computer, keep up with our account. That's why we get the financial. So what the city does, check to ensure that it's inputted right, okay, and then they cut checks every 2 weeks. So how much you gonna charge us to cut checks every 2 weeks? How many people involved with cutting a check every 2 weeks? If a person gonna cut a check every 2 weeks, how much we gonna pay? Because how long does it take them to cut 7 checks or 8 checks? How many people work 8 checks? It's probably gonna take an hour if you add the time up. So all I'm saying is, we have to pay fees for services that are rendered. And if they're not providing the service, then we don't pay the fee. So there's a fee involved, and we could pay a lump sum. But if we find out what it's going to take, I don't think it's going to be as much as it is. So that's all I have to say about the fees.
And in the previous meetings, of course, we've been going back and forth, and that was the recommendation twice that we do the invoice. And so I do understand your concern.
Well, it really don't have to be an invoice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying an invoice. I'm not looking for a paper trail or something. But if you're going to provide financial support over here, what are you going to be doing? If you're going to be just making sure that the information is inputted, what, you cutting checks? Okay, how much are you going to charge us to cut checks? How much are you going to charge us to ensure that this information is put in? Because it's not involving the whole finance department. And it shouldn't take long because you don't have that many employees here. But that's what I'm talking about when we pay for what they actually do for us. We don't want the city to have their employees to take time away from doing their work with the city and do something that pertains to the Economic Development Corporation, and the Economic Development Corporation doesn't pay. That's not the purpose. The purpose is we pay for what you provide us. And if you providing us what you're going to do, where's the big problem? This is a simple task. You're right. It's been going back and forth, but it shouldn't. Everybody know what you're going to do. Personnel, what do you possibly do for us in the form of personnel on an annual basis? How much you going to charge us? Then we pay it. But this percentage is not right. Because if we do break it down to what you actually going to do, you're going to find out that this amount they talking about paying is too much.
And since this is an ongoing matter, I don't know that y'all need a motion for this item, but I'll definitely take back to Frank,
We could table it.
the concerns and see if we can bring y'all some options for this next meeting with regard to one, like you said, where is that requirement to pay the fees, to begin with, and then, maybe look into some, not a straight invoicing system, but maybe, some way to better account for the services we provided. I can take those notes and get with him about that.
Thank you.
Motion, we table this until we get the information that Mr. Doucette request from the attorney.
I second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. We table item number 6. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Moving forward to non-consent agenda item number 7, to discuss possible consideration of right of entry request from Gaurodana and Associates Incorporated for the Texas Department of Transportation on Jade Avenue Business Park. George.
Okay, we normally get these where basically they need the right of entry to do the surveying on the property. I think this one is a proposed bridge located 365 and closer to the Jade intersection. And that's all we're asking, that, go ahead and grant them the temporary right of way.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we provide a right-of-way to the Gordona Associates for the J Business Park. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Non-consent agenda item number 8, to discuss possible consideration for default interest rate for economic incentives. George.
While we were dealing with the actual agreement on number 9, the client was looking at the percentage at 10% on the default, and we're asking, could we actually bring it down, I think, to maybe 4.5 or something like that. So we did take into consideration, what she asked, yeah. So we did take into consideration that these been around for, 15 years plus or whatever. So by Ms. Corner being on the board, working at the bank, we called her and asked her, what's reasonable. She got online and looked, I think, at, it might have been Wall Street Journal, I don't know which one it is, but she got on there and her recommendation was 7%. She said she wouldn't go down to the 4.5 or whatever that, the lady requested. And so what we were asking you guys, if it's the pleasure of the board, if we bring that rate down from a 10% on the default to 7%.
Would that affect our previous contracts? Or it wouldn't?
It wouldn't affect the ones in the past.
Forward.
That's just moving forward. And again, our thing is, of course, as always, how we don't want to stick nobody out there bad. However, we do know if somebody default, we want our stuff, back in return. So again, it's just asking if you guys will bring it down from that 10% to the 7%.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we bring down the interest rate for the Economic Development Incentive from 10 to 7%.
7.5.
7.5?
7.5, right?
1%, I think.
7%, correct?
Right.
From 10% to 7%. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Non-consent agenda item number 9, to discuss possible consideration of the amendment of the agreement with Holland Gas LLC. George.
And basically, that's it. The amendment would be to put 7% on her agreement from the 10%.
So move.
It has been moved and seconded that the amendment to the agreement for Holland Gas LLC has been moved from 10% to 7%. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we want to move to the closed executive session in order to comply with the requirements of Chapter 551 Open Meeting Law of the Texas Government Code. Prior to going to enclose the meeting section for presiding officers of the City of Port Arthur, Section 4A Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors should make the following public announcement. A closed meeting or executive session be held pursuant to the following sections of Chapter 551 Texas Government Code. Section 551.071 Government Code, to discuss the attorney Frank Garza, pending a potential litigation and/or legal advice. Number 2, Section 551-072 Government Code to liberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or real value property. Section 551-074 Government Code to discuss matters of personnel, interim operations manager and PADC CEO. And Section 551-087 Government Code to discuss incentives for commercial and industrial business prospect. At this time, we are moving to executive session. I'd like to reconvene the regular board meeting for February the 7th, 2022. Johnny, can I have a roll call, please?
Darrell Anderson, Beverly Raymond, Christopher Smith,
Here.
Rashad Harris, Harold Doucette, Jerry LeBeau, Rhonda Connor. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Joni. In regards to the interim operations manager, I want to see if we want to make a motion for the extending of the contract for 30 days for the interim operations manager. I'm open to a motion.
Motion that we extend Crystal Merler, I think her name is, Mueller, contract for 30 days from February 22nd, beginning February 22nd. The extension will begin on February 22nd.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded that we extend Crystal Mueller's contract, effective the end of her contract date, which will be on the 22nd. Her new contract, 30 days will begin on the 23rd. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Oh, number 5. Let me go back to number 5. We want to go back to the non-consent agenda item number 5. No, excuse me, is it number 4 or number 5, George? Or number 6?
6.
Oh, to discuss the possible consideration of PADC Interim CEO Agreement requested by Jerry LeBeau, Board President. And that was in regards to the extension. That was in regards to the extension of the contract for the interim CEO.
Cease, not extension, cease.
Oh, the cease of that agreement on the 22nd of February, correct?
21st.
21st?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me restate clearly. It is for the termination, the cease, correct? Of the contract for the PADC interim CEO agreement effective the 22nd of February, 2022. I would like to take it for motion, please.
That's contingent on our new CEO being in place by that time, right?
That is correct.
Okay, because we're putting dates in. If something goes awry, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So I move that we terminate the interim CEO's contract upon the arrival of our new CEO.
Second. That's correct, right?
That's what the contract says.
Okay.
Okay, it has been moved and second that we have, that we terminate upon the arrival and seating of the new CEO, contract for action item number 5. Non-consent agenda item number 5. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
A parliamentary question. Okay, we just voted that we're not going to cancel Mr. George Davis' contract until after the CEO begins. What about Crystal? I mean, should we also, can we go back to that motion? I know we made the motion, but can we go back and revisit? I don't know, tell me.
Question, should we amend the motion with Ms. Mueller because we put dates in there and not when the CEO begins?
Well, with Ms. Mueller, then even if you keep him in, she still is going to be in because you got her in now. So you don't need to do nothing to that.
That's fine.
Do we have any other outstanding items?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn the meeting for the February 7th, 2022 EDC board meeting. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Have a good night.